So the president-elect in the United States of America, Donald Trump, is now putting together his team. And to decode Donald Trump in the White House, with me is Ambassador Taranjit Sandhu, India's former ambassador to the United States of America. And few people know and understand the thinking of the American leadership, whether it's the Republicans or the Democrats, better than Ambassador Sandhu. Ambassador Sandhu, many thanks for joining me here on India Today.
Thank you, Gaurav. Wonderful to see you. I know you have been in so many action places. I keep watching you all over.
Sir, welcome, and I'm glad you could find time to join us on India Today. What does Donald Trump in the White House mean for India? And, we'll take it one by one on various issues, India, the region, the world. But Donald Trump in the White House, how will the relationship between India and the United States be different than the Biden administration, in your view?
So, Gaurav, this particular election, it is historic in three ways. See, firstly, it is rarely, perhaps more than 100 years, that a former president contested elections and won. Number two, he's also got the popular vote. You know, it's been rare with Republican presidential candidates to win the popular vote. Now, the popular vote gives him a mandate. And thirdly, and this also is again a very rare case, that all the three chambers this time are likely to come to the Republicans, which means administration, Senate, and the House will all be under Republican control, which further means that he can push through his agenda in the first 2 years. And why I'm saying first 2 years? Because the midterms will come in 2 years. And as always, as in any democracy, it is difficult to predict. Because the pressure will be on him to deliver.
Yes. And there's so much hope with which he's entering White House in terms of what he's promised, the kind of mandate the United States has given to him. But if we were to talk about India specific, and we're looking at his team that's coming together, the team that campaigned for him, his vice president, other people, how do you see all of them coming together, and how does that work for India?
I think you very correctly pointed out, and you mentioned about his vice presidential candidate. He's going to be a very important part. And in coming years, you will see him emerging because he's very young. He had very recently got elected as a senator, and I was there that time. But one of the less known parts, we all know it, but we often miss it, is the influence of his wife, Usha Vance.
Usha
Tilkuri, of course, from Andhra, Telugu, but she's going to be the first second lady. However, she's been a very powerful influence on him. And you have to only read his bestseller, Hilly Billy Elegy, or watch, most of your audience now can go to Netflix. The movie is available there. Watch it. And you will see the influence of his wife. And he has himself admitted that
Yes.
in his success, she's played a very, very important role. And she's always been a topper. And remember, Yale, Cambridge, that's the background. And her grandfather, ask any of the IITians, he's a legend there, Rama Shastri. So that's the first important influence. But let's come to the cabinet or the close advisors that are being assembled. So far, the choices have been well regarded.
So let's take those choices one by one, Ambassador.
Yeah,
Let's begin with Mike Waltz. He's known as the warrior diplomat. His choice to be his national security advisor. How do you look at the warrior diplomat who's anyway said that 21st century is, for the US, India is the most important partnership? But how do you look at Mike Waltz as NSA, sir?
So just before I come to Congressman Mike Waltz, with whom we have had a great relationship, he's a great believer in India-US partnership, and personally too, both him and his wife. I've had a excellent, outstanding relationship. But I also want to mention about the chief of staff, Susie
Yes.
Wiles. This is the first female chief of staff, and chief of staff is a very critical appointment in the United States. And Susie Wiles has led the successful campaign of President Trump, and she's highly regarded and respected by him and the rest. She's a bridge builder, and therefore she's a performer. That's a very positive thing to watch in this selection, as I'm seeing it. Now, let's come to Congressman Mike Waltz, as you said. Firstly, Congressman Mike Waltz is going to have a cabinet rank this time. President Trump has declared that. And he's an army veteran, he's a colonel, he has served in Afghanistan. So he knows the war. And today, since it's a Veterans Day, he's highly respected in the US. And when I say he's one of our strongest supporters on Capitol, this is no exaggeration. Just look at his statements, on India-US strategic partnership. He wrote an article in 2021 in Foreign Policy, where he used the word most consequential relationship. He has strongly asked for priority to be given to US-India partnership. And there he has spoken about everything. I mean, I'm sure those areas, you want to talk about Pakistan, you want to talk about China, but also about the new emerging technology partnership between United States and India. And that's why this relationship has moved to a partnership. IT, digital, cyber security. These are the areas which Mike has spoken about. And, his wife, Julia, by the way, she was the domestic policy advisor to President Trump last time. So this is a power couple. And with him, we have certainly focus coming to India. I'm sure you have seen many of his interviews. They are floating around today. But something, again, wonderful to remember is that he co-led the congressional delegation to last year's Independence Day celebrations. And, the Prime Minister himself acknowledged the presence of this CODEL. And he, of course, has a good relationship with both our National Security Advisor and External Affairs Minister. So having him as NSA is definitely a positive for United States-India partnership. Incidentally, the outgoing NSA was also very positive on India-US. And we have seen that. I think ISET is a wonderful product where both our NSA and Jake Sullivan contributed. So this will only deepen and go further.
In fact, I remember interviewing you once earlier where you'd said that India's biggest advantage, or words to that effect, whether it's the Republicans or the Democrats, our relationship remains on a high. But if we were to specifically talk about the NSA and US-China relations, given the statements that have been made by Donald Trump, do you see China nervous or uncomfortable with this team coming together?
See, along with NSA, if the likely, what is equivalent of External Affairs Minister, the Secretary of State, in the US system, he's the number 2. He's actually designated as number 2. And that's going to be Senator Marco Rubio. And just 2-3 things I want to mention about him, and then both combined take your question. Firstly, he's a strong supporter of India-US strategic partnership. Again, and here I want to point out, in June of 2020, at the time when Galwan aggression happened, he spoke to me and with a clear expression of solidarity with India. Look, at that time, there were not many who were coming out. He came out, and that tweet is for everyone to see. So he's a person who stood with India during the time of aggression. And that's why I want to point out to that. He, of course, has been a great advocate of India-US defense cooperation. There are three aspects. He has put bills in the US Senate, and three aspects. One, he talks of technology transfer. Second, he talks of ban on military aid to Pakistan. And third, CATSA exemption. So I think
Yes.
all these three will indicate to you that both these people who are going to be in the critical strategic positions have a very positive approach towards India. And that, since I am a retired diplomat now, I can certainly venture some of India's not friendly countries may be a bit worried. Now, if you see the statements of both these people on our northern neighbor, I think they are very, very explicit. And mind you, I want to mention here that the northern neighbor in the United States, domestic politics has become
Yes.
an issue. And they have no one else to blame but themselves. So when that happens, there is an additional aspect which every US politician will have to look internally to.
In fact, I wanted to split this and come to that aspect also. But let's take this one by one, Ambassador, with your permission. If I were to come back for a moment to Waltz, Mike Waltz, for a moment on his military career, his multiple tours of duty in Afghanistan, and I want to ask you, sir, if he's had multiple tours of duty in Afghanistan, clearly he knows the ins and outs about Pakistan being a radical Islamist state sponsor of terror. Is our neighbor to the West likely to be more than just uncomfortable with this Trump administration?
You have to just look at Hassan Haqqani's tweet. He's brought it to the attention, and he has brought the interview of Mike Waltz.
Yes.
Now, I also want to mention to you that I do not, just like the External Affairs Minister in many of his interviews has mentioned, that Pakistan hardly figures as a issue between top discussions that take place. And I think that should worry Pakistan to the extent that they have to internally, economically come out of the mess they are in. And therefore, I think many a times Prime Minister Modi has also said that a strong, economically viable Pakistan, where people to people friendship is there, is what we cherish for, not which is infested with terrorism and is practicing, what are not acceptable means of diplomacy. So therefore, I would certainly agree with you that there is an issue of concern, to put it so mildly, that definitely Pakistan has to look forward, to look ahead, to improve its focus and focus on economic development of its people.
How would Ukraine be looking at these developments given the public stance of both the leaders that you've spoken of, the National Security Advisor and the likely Secretary of State in the United States of America? Both are considered very, very strong, with very strong opinion, including on the Russia-Ukraine war.
So let me put it in perspective. You yourself said that there are very high expectations on President Trump. And those certainly start off with the state of economy and particularly the cost of living, which has been a very critical factor in people voting for him. They have voted with hope. They have voted with expectations. On the external side, there are certainly two major problematic issues in the world where, again, people are looking world over. People are looking with hope that President Trump and his team will move ahead and resolve those problems. And foremost amongst them is the Russia-Ukraine issue. Now, I think some kind of a fair settlement. Now, look, fair settlements which have to be again accepted by the people. And here, India has a critical role to play. You know that our Prime Minister has a good relationship with both the President of Russia and the President of Ukraine, and
Sure.
also has a very good equation with the incoming President of the United States, just like he had a very good equation with the sitting President of the United States too. So India would be, I'm sure, playing an important role. And I don't want to jump the gun because certainly both sides will be nervous, but some kind of a reasonable settlement is necessary because this is not an era of war and we can't continue fighting. And look, the people are suffering. And that's what President Trump has also pointed out.
And sir, since you mentioned very specifically, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's initiative, and I've had the privilege, if I may, I reported in July Prime Minister Narendra Modi's meeting with President Putin in Moscow. Then August, I also reported on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's meeting with President Zelensky in Kiev, and then back in Kazan in Russia for the BRICS summit. I was reporting from Kazan on the meeting again. Now, the peace initiative and India's efforts, and as you very rightly mentioned, sir, the Prime Minister's close equation, both with the current President of the United States of America and the 47th President of the United States of America, the President elect. What role do you see India playing in all of this, given the Prime Minister's equation with these world leaders, sir?
Again, I don't want to jump the gun, but look at the world around. How many leaders are there who have equations across the board? And I've just narrated to you. Prime Minister has a good equation with President Putin. He has a good equation with President Zelensky, and he has an excellent equation with incoming President Trump. So I think that speaks for itself. There are very few international leaders who will be able to talk to all the three. And I think India is one of the very few ones.
Sir, given the White House administration that's coming in, or President Trump's team, Elise Stefanik is being spoken of as, the US-UN, United Nations Permanent Representative to United Nations, US rep. Sir, do you see the Israel-Iran, that conflict there? Do you see an escalation that could happen there with a more robust approach being adopted towards Iran?
Look, my own sense is there may be a short term and long term. I don't see a long term escalation because, as I said, that President Trump will finally need to resolve that, take the leadership and resolve that. In short term, there might be skirmishes, there might be attacks, certainly. But I think in the long term, perhaps some settlement would come in. And look, the interesting part, the very interesting part of this US election, go to the state of Michigan and you look at the voting pattern of a certain section. Interestingly, both the sides, in a way, have voted for President Trump. And that surprised many analysts there. So, what I'm pointing out is that in the long term, I think resolving this problem will be an important milestone which President Trump would try and achieve. And here I have a slightly different theory. In the second terms, normally, and I know I'm jumping the gun, not many analysts have spoken like this, but in the second term, many of the presidents have gone to make history. I think we should not rule out President Trump. He's going to be in his second term, and somewhere along, he will also touch upon issues which will leave a legacy.
Interesting, and I wonder what that legacy would be. There's one name that's doing the rounds, and who better than you to guide us through the importance that the American media is attaching to the name of Kash Patel. some say he could be CIA director, some say he could head the FBI, others say he could be Attorney General. What is your reading of someone who's seen as, in a way, a very fierce Trump loyalist, and someone who wants to, take forward that thinking of President Trump to clean the swamps, drain the swamp?
So, many of these interesting names had come with President Trump in 2020 February. Anyway, that's only the side part. Look, as I indicated to you, that this election, one was on cost of living, and second, it was on law and order, on criminal activity, on immigration, and deportations will come out. Now, there are going to be three areas, and here I'm jumping into in advance. Look, challenges are part of any relationship, and United States and India relationship will always have challenges. It's a democratic policy, but in the challenges come the opportunities. So three challenges which I see. One is going to be trade, second, tariffs, and third, immigration slash deportation. So Kash Patel, with his background, and Stephen Miller, who's been perhaps nominated as Deputy Chief of Staff of Policy, both of them will have a strong view on immigration issue. Now, that issue needs to be resolved domestically, because that's going to be one of the priorities which President Trump has spoken about. How it is tackled is something to be seen. But coming to India-US, I can say with confidence, look, President Trump has always said he is a deal cutter. He can cut deals. And you can certainly give full marks to our leadership and our team to be able to cut that. I think ultimately all these three issues need to be resolved, and they will be resolved.
And so when you talk about immigration, the choice for borders, Czar Tom Norman has been talked about very extensively. Your views on that, and if I may, one issue that arose during the Biden presidency, and especially towards the later years, was the issue of one, Canada, the Nijjar case, the Pannu case, and suddenly out of nowhere, an issue that was long dead in India, the Khalistan, so-called Khalistan terror issue, that suddenly resurfaced. How do you see that pan out in the weeks and months ahead, whether it's with Canada or with the United States of America?
Look, I will, on Canada, already External Affairs Minister, our High Commissioner there has spoken. So I will stick to United States, India. And here, I want to mention to you that this relationship is far deeper. It's a partnership. It stretches. We have spoken about the strategic, but we didn't speak about the healthcare partnership. Today you go into United States, you pick up a medicine, fever-reducing medicine. Look behind, it is made in India. Or I've not spoken about the energy partnership.
Yes.
India is a big LNG importer. In fact, in 2020 February, when President Trump had come here, when Prime Minister Modi spoke in detail about this relationship, it took President by surprise, very pleasant surprise. And if you recall the press conference, Prime Minister spoke about it, and you could see President Trump very, very happy. Similarly, IT, digital, startup, whole lot of them, the new emerging technology I've spoken to you about. And finally, last and not the least, the education and knowledge partnership. Do remember we have 275,000 Indian students there, and 2/3 of them in STEM areas. In addition, look at our CEOs, look at the millions of Indians who are professionals. These all bring value to United States economy and competitive edge. And this is the relationship which is there. And just a few bunch of guys trying to spoil and be spoilers are not going to spoil this relationship. I am very confident about it. I saw that in my 4 years. This doesn't bother me that much. Look, I can say n number of things, but it is dignifying people who should not even be mentioned, because are they really serious? What are they talking about? So United States and India and US has on public gone saying that they appreciated the fact that there is a committee, there are exchanges that are taking place, and let that issue play through that. I don't see it impacting the relationship. This relationship has moved far ahead, and I don't see any of these characters being able to bring that down.
So well put, sir. Absolutely. What about issues like the trouble that we're facing with radical Islamists riding piggyback on a students' movement in Bangladesh, for example, and some arguing that this couldn't have happened, the removal of Sheikh Hasina, without the blessings of some very powerful people, in America. Would you want to weigh in on that? And with the Trump administration coming in, is is your understanding that Hindus may be better treated and these radical Islamists, they will be in check in Bangladesh?
Look, again, on Bangladesh, there are experts who are speaking on it. I don't want to jump in, but I only want to point out one thing to you. Look, like the Indian system, the US is also a democratic system. You know, the FBI came out and indicted Biden's son. So, look, there is, in a democratic system, there may be certain agencies which may be playing around, but to push it completely, otherwise, you think this kind of a relationship would have been there? Look, the kind of cooperation we have had. Look at the Quad. Look at what is called India, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Europe
Oh,
corridor.
yes.
Look at the big issues. I mean, I don't want to discuss that element because there may be certain things which we also need to look into. But at the same time, if certain elements, there always be in a democratic polity some elements which can get into this. But on the whole, I think the primacy to India is given by United States as far as a lot of international issues are concerned, including in our neighborhood.
And you see that defense cooperation be one of the strongest pillars like it was. Will that remain, or is that likely to improve even further when we're talking about, the G414 engines, or co-development of new technology with India and the United States? Do you see that take off in a bigger way, sir?
So, look, Gaurav, if the strategic thinking and the people we have enumerated just now, look at their writings, look at their thoughts, it is bound to deepen. And US India partnership, as I have indicated to you, look at the IT, look at the digital, look at the startup. And mind you, let's go over the international companies all over the world, Europe, the rest of the world. Where are maximum CEOs who become the CEOs and are highly regarded? Today, if there is an Indian American on the board in United States, the value of the shares go up. Now, in this kind of a situation, where else? I would like to look around the world. I don't want to name the countries, but look at the other Western countries. How many CEOs of Indian origin are there? And even during the COVID, look at the doctors. I mean, we can enumerate them. There was some Indian American doctor who was speaking and talking about COVID. So that's the strength of United States-Indian partnership. And here I may just digress a bit. The only country which has passed a resolution saying that Arunachal is part of India.
Yes.
Dig it and find. That's also a part of things which we all need to remember. Look, today, India-US technology cooperation is something which is worth it. And we do require this cooperation in our own interest.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Questions remain endless, and I hope to have you back on our show. As per your convenience, very soon, sir. But for the moment, for joining me here on this India Today special broadcast, Ambassador Sandhu, many thanks.
Thank you, Gaurav. Look forward.